Shocking secrets behind Sherlock Holmes' most mysterious case. Sherlock Holmes is a genius, a man who can see the truth behind the lies, but even he had a case that almost broke him. A case so twisted, so impossible, that it forced him to question his own methods. This is the story of one of the most mysterious and terrifying cases of his career, a case that left even Sherlock Holmes shaken. It all began with a single, seemingly insignificant clue, a letter written in an elegant but hurried script that arrived at 221B Baker Street one fateful evening. The letter was from a woman, a name that no one had heard before, but when Holmes read it, his usual calm demeanor vanished. The case was about a missing person, a young woman, whose disappearance was far more sinister than anyone could imagine. She had vanished into thin air, leaving only a blood-stained handkerchief behind and a single piece of jewelry, a strange, ancient ring. It didn't make sense. No body, no witnesses, just the faintest trace of blood and a cryptic message. At first, Holmes thought it was just another case of a runaway or a lover's quarrel gone wrong. But as he dug deeper, he realized that this wasn't a normal case. The woman was not just missing, she had been taken. But by whom and for what purpose? Holmes wasn't the only one who was interested in this mystery. As he began his investigation, he soon discovered that there were others searching for the woman as well, dangerous people, people with power and resources, people who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. It became clear that this was no ordinary kidnapping. This was a carefully orchestrated game, and Holmes had become its pawn. But what Holmes didn't know was that he wasn't just dealing with criminals, he was dealing with something far darker, something that could destroy him. As he followed the trail of clues, it led him to a hidden society, a secret organization that operated from the shadows. These people were not ordinary criminals. They were wealthy, influential, and had their hands in everything, from politics to business to law enforcement, and they were willing to do anything to protect their secrets. Holmes soon found himself entangled in a web of deception with no way out. The deeper he went, the more dangerous it became. There were no safe places, no allies, and no guarantees. Even his trusted companion, Dr. Watson, was drawn into the mystery. But the worst part? Holmes had no idea who the enemy was. The faces kept changing, the clues kept shifting, and just when he thought he had everything figured out, the pieces fell apart. Every time he thought he had found the truth, he was led in another direction, deeper into the heart of the conspiracy. He couldn't trust anyone, not even himself. Was this all a game, or was there something more sinister at play? The most shocking part of the case came when Holmes realized the truth. The woman he had been searching for wasn't just a victim, she had been a part of the conspiracy all along. She was playing her own game, and Holmes had been her pawn from the beginning. Everything he had believed, every assumption he had made, turned out to be wrong. The case had led him in circles, and now he was caught in a trap of his own making. What followed was a race against time, with Holmes desperately trying to outsmart those who controlled the game. But the more he learned, the more he realized that he was no longer in control. The people behind this plot were too powerful, too intelligent, and too ruthless. They were always one step ahead, and every move Holmes made seemed to play into their hands. The final twist came when Holmes was faced with a choice: to expose the truth and risk everything, or to walk away, knowing that he would never understand the full scope of the conspiracy. What would he do? What would you do if you were in his shoes? The case was too dangerous, too complex, and too personal. In the end, it wasn't just about solving a mystery, it was about surviving a world that was far darker than anyone could imagine. And in the end, Holmes was forced to admit something he never thought he would say. There are some mysteries that even Sherlock Holmes cannot solve. And so, with the full weight of the conspiracy bearing down on him, he set out to confront the mastermind behind it all. The final confrontation would come in a place where shadows ruled, where the line between friend and foe was blurred, and where the truth could be more dangerous than any lie. In the end, Holmes uncovered the shocking truth. The woman, the missing woman, had never truly disappeared. She had been living under a false identity, working as an agent for an underground organization that sought to bring down the very institutions that held society together. She had played both sides, using her beauty and charm to manipulate those around her, all while pulling the strings from behind the scenes. She had known that Holmes would come for her, that he would unravel the mystery, but what he didn't know was that he had already fallen into her trap. The truth, as it turned out, was far darker than he could have imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just about power, it was about control over the future itself, and the woman was at the heart of it all. As Holmes stood before her, staring into her eyes, he realized that he had been outsmarted at every turn. The greatest mystery of all wasn't the crime, it was how he had been played by someone who was as brilliant, as calculating, and as ruthless as he was. In the end, the case was never truly solved. The conspiracy remained intact, and Holmes was left to wonder if he had been chasing shadows all along. One thing was certain: this case would haunt him for the rest of his life, a reminder that even the greatest detective in the world can sometimes be outmatched. And as for the woman, she disappeared once again, leaving nothing behind but the memory of a game that would never end. Holmes spent the following days in a daze, the weight of the case pressing down on him like a suffocating fog. The mystery had consumed him, drained him, and in the end, it had left him with nothing but a bitter taste of defeat. He had always believed that the truth could be uncovered, that no puzzle was too complex for his intellect, but this case had shattered that belief. He had been outplayed, and worse still, he had failed to protect those he cared about. Watson, ever loyal, tried to reassure his friend, but even he could see the toll it had taken on Holmes. The detective who once thrived on the thrill of the chase was now consumed by the haunting feeling of unfinished business. There were no more leads, no more clues, and the woman who had started it all, remained a shadow, slipping further away with each passing day. She had woven herself into the very fabric of the conspiracy, and now even Holmes's sharpest mind couldn't unravel her role. She was like a phantom, always just out of reach, and the more he tried to chase her, the more he found himself entangled in the web she had spun. It was as though she had anticipated every move, every deduction. Holmes had never encountered an opponent like this before. He had faced Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime, but even Moriarty had been predictable compared to her. This woman was different. She was a ghost, a myth. The very thought of her made Holmes's blood run cold. But what troubled him most wasn't the mystery itself. It was the feeling that perhaps the entire case had been an elaborate test, a test of his very limits. Perhaps the woman had been nothing more than a catalyst, a tool to expose his vulnerabilities, to show him that even the great Sherlock Holmes could be broken. It was a realization that left him questioning everything. Was there a bigger game at play, one far beyond his understanding? And what did this woman want? What was her end game? These questions gnawed at Holmes, keeping him awake long into the night. It was as though the case had become a part of him, lodged deep within his psyche, a puzzle he couldn't solve,
a riddle without an answer. He tried to push it from his mind, to focus on the next case, but every new mystery seemed insignificant compared to the one that still lingered in the back of his mind. The woman, the missing woman, remained a specter, haunting him at every turn. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of her. The trail had gone cold. But then, one night, as Holmes was sitting in his study, a sudden knock at the door shattered the silence. It was a simple knock, yet it carried with it the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. Holmes's heart raced. Could it be? Had she returned? Or was this another piece of the puzzle, another game to be played? He opened the door cautiously, and standing there was a man he had never seen before. The stranger handed him a letter that had been sealed with an emblem Holmes recognized all too well. The emblem of the secret society he had uncovered during the investigation. The letter was brief, but the words it contained sent a chill down Holmes's spine. "You have not seen the last of her. The game is not over." And just like that, the mystery reignited. The woman who had haunted him for so long was still out there, and the game was far from finished. Sherlock Holmes had been wrong. The case was never over. It was just beginning. Holmes stared at the letter in his hand, his fingers trembling slightly as the words burned into his mind. The game is not over. The cold realization hit him harder than any blow. The woman, the phantom who had eluded him at every turn, was still somewhere out there, and the conspiracy was deeper than he had ever imagined. But why now? Why return after all this time? Had she been watching him all along, waiting for the right moment to strike again? The man at the door was gone before Holmes could ask a single question. The mystery had deepened, and so had his obsession. He sat down at his desk, staring at the letter, trying to decipher its meaning. The words seemed simple enough, but to Holmes, nothing was ever simple. There was a hidden message beneath the surface, and he knew it. The emblem sealed on the letter, that was the key. It was a symbol of the secret society that had controlled the fate of the woman and so many others. It was a shadow organization, operating from the darkest corners of society, pulling strings in ways that even Holmes couldn't fully comprehend. It was the same group that had orchestrated the events that had led him to the woman in the first place. As Holmes began to think through the possibilities, a sense of dread washed over him. The woman had played him, yes, but there was more to it than that. She was part of a much larger game, one that Holmes wasn't fully equipped to understand. This wasn't just a case. This was a battle of wits, a war for control, with Holmes unknowingly in the center of it all. But who were the true players, and why had they chosen him as their adversary? Holmes' thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. This time, it was Watson, looking concerned, his face drawn with worry. "Sherlock, you look troubled, more so than usual," he said, stepping inside. Holmes didn't respond immediately. Instead, he slid the letter across the desk toward Watson, who raised an eyebrow before reading the words silently. The expression on Watson's face shifted as he finished, the concern deepening. "This is not just about a missing woman, is it?" "No, Watson," Holmes replied, his voice low and filled with a newfound intensity. "It never was. The woman, the disappearance, they were just pieces. But the game itself, the true game, is far more dangerous than we could have imagined." Watson's brow furrowed. "Dangerous? Sherlock, what are you saying?" Holmes stood abruptly, pacing the room, his mind racing. "What I'm saying, Watson, is that we've been pawns in a much larger scheme, a scheme that stretches far beyond what we can see, a network of power and influence that controls the world from behind the scenes. We were only supposed to solve a puzzle, but now we've uncovered a war that is being fought right under our noses. Watson looked at him, not fully understanding, but sensing the gravity in Holmes' tone. "And this woman, you think she's part of this war?" Holmes stopped pacing, his eyes burning with a fierce determination. "Yes, she's not just a victim, Watson. She's a soldier in a silent battle, and that battle is far from over. The letter, it's a warning. They know we're getting too close to the truth. They're watching, waiting for us to make a mistake." Watson swallowed hard. But how do we stop them? How do we even begin to fight back against something so powerful? Holmes turned to face his friend, his expression hardening. "We fight with the only weapon we have left, the truth. We dig deeper, follow the few clues we have left, and trust that we can outwit them. Because if we don't, Watson, we may not only lose the case, we may lose everything." With that, Holmes turned toward the door, his mind already racing ahead, formulating a plan. "We have no choice now. The game is afoot once again, and this time, Watson, we're not just chasing shadows." The two men left the room together, their steps echoing in the hallway as they prepared for what was to come. The mystery, which had seemed so distant and inconsequential at first, had now become a matter of life and death. Sherlock Holmes had been pulled into something far more dangerous than he had ever anticipated, and this time there would be no turning back. The final confrontation was looming on the horizon, and only time would reveal whether they could survive the storm that was coming. The night was cold as Holmes and Watson made their way through the foggy streets of London, the city cloaked in an eerie silence. The usual bustle of the metropolis had been replaced by an unsettling quiet, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. They walked with purpose, each step bringing them closer to a truth that had remained just out of reach for too long. Holmes was silent, his mind turning over the possibilities, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness around them, always alert, always calculating. Watson, on the other hand, was visibly anxious. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "Where are we going, Holmes?" Watson asked, his voice breaking the silence. "What exactly are we looking for?" Holmes didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the path ahead, his thoughts still racing. "We're looking for the truth, Watson," he replied, his voice cool, though it carried a note of urgency. "And we'll find it at the heart of this conspiracy. The woman, the society, everything, it's all connected. We're closer than ever now. I can feel it." Watson shivered. "But how do we even begin to unravel something so vast? This isn't just a case, it's a war, as you said, and we're not prepared for it." Holmes stopped walking, turning to face his companion. "We may not be prepared, Watson, but we have something far more powerful, our minds and the truth. The society is built on lies, on shadows, but we have the light. We'll expose them for what they are." Watson nodded, though the weight of the situation still lingered heavy on his shoulders. They continued their journey until they reached a nondescript building nestled between two larger structures. Holmes paused, studying the building intently, his gaze calculating. "This is it," he said, his voice low. "Inside, we'll find the answers we're looking for. But we must be cautious. There's no telling who's waiting for us." They moved swiftly, their steps muffled by the thick fog, and entered the building through a back entrance. The dimly lit hallway they found themselves in seemed almost abandoned, with peeling wallpaper and flickering gas lamps casting strange shadows on the walls. It felt like a forgotten corner of London, cut off from the rest of the world, a place where secrets were buried and lives were lost.
Holmes led the way, his mind focused, every sense alert to the slightest sound. They moved deeper into the building, past empty rooms and narrow hallways, until they reached a heavy wooden door. Holmes hesitated for a moment, his fingers hovering over the handle. "Whatever happens next, Watson," he said, "we must stay together. Trust no one, not even those we think we know." Watson nodded, though his heart was racing. Holmes turned the handle and pushed the door open, revealing a large, dimly lit room. In the center of the room was a long table, covered in papers, maps, and strange symbols. It was a room designed for plotting, for scheming. And at the far end of the room, standing with his back to them, was a man they had seen before. The man turned slowly, his face shadowed but familiar. Holmes' eyes narrowed. "You," he said, his voice sharp with recognition. The man's lips curled into a faint smile. "I see you've made it this far, Holmes, but this is where your journey ends." Holmes's hand instinctively reached for his cane, his mind already working out the best course of action. Watson, however, stepped forward, his voice steady but full of suspicion. "Who are you? What is this place?" The man stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling confidence. "I am the one who's been pulling the strings. You've been chasing shadows, but you've been blind to the truth all along. The woman you've been searching for, she's just a small part of a much bigger picture." Holmes's gaze locked onto the man. "What do you want from us?" The man smiled again, his expression cold and calculated. "What I want, Holmes, is for you to understand that you've been a part of this game from the very beginning. You're not just a detective, you're a key player, and now you've come too close to the truth. You're a threat, and we don't take kindly to threats." The tension in the room thickened. Holmes's mind raced. He could feel it now, the walls closing in, the weight of the conspiracy tightening its grip around them. But this man had made one fatal mistake. He had underestimated Sherlock Holmes. Without warning, Holmes darted forward, his cane a blur as he aimed it directly at the man's chest. The man stepped back, surprised by the sudden move, but he quickly regained his composure, pulling out a concealed weapon and pointing it at Holmes. "Enough games, Holmes," he hissed. "This ends now." But before he could pull the trigger, a loud bang rang out from the hallway, followed by a crash. The door slammed open, and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted in the dim light. It was her, the woman, the one who had eluded Holmes for so long. The room went silent as all eyes turned to her. She stepped forward, her face a mask of calm determination. "You should have stayed away," she said softly, her voice carrying a deadly weight. "This was never your case to solve." Holmes felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The game had changed, and now it was more dangerous than ever. Holmes stood frozen, his mind racing to process the woman's words, but in his chest he felt a sharp, cold realization. This was the moment everything shifted. She wasn't just a part of the conspiracy, she was the heart of it. She had orchestrated everything from the very beginning, pulling Holmes into this web of deception with a masterful hand. The man, now standing at her side, was merely an instrument in her game. She had played them both from the start. Holmes had been chasing shadows, but the truth was right in front of him all along. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his, her voice calm and calculated. "You thought you were in control, Holmes," she said, "but you were never the player. You were the pawn." Watson, visibly confused and alarmed, took a step back, his eyes darting between the two figures. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman smiled, the expression chilling. "What I want, Watson, is simple.
I want control. Everything you've been chasing, the woman, the conspiracy, the hidden truths, was all part of a plan to shift the balance of power in this world. And now it's too late for you to stop it." Holmes clenched his fists, his mind now clearing with grim understanding. "You've manipulated everything. You used the case, used us, and for what?" The woman's smile widened, her eyes glinting with a dangerous gleam. "For the future, for a world where the elite control everything, where there are no mysteries, no detectives, no truth, just power." Holmes's pulse quickened. It was clear now, this wasn't about a case or even about money. It was about something much bigger, a secret war to shape the future. The weight of her words settled like a stone in her gut. She was right. Everything they had uncovered, every clue they thought had brought them closer to the truth, had been placed deliberately to lead them here, to her, to this inevitable conclusion. "You've made a grave mistake," Holmes said, his voice low, dangerous, "underestimating me." The woman tilted her head, her lips curling in a knowing smirk. "Have I? Or have you simply failed to realize that the game has already ended?" Before Holmes could respond, she turned sharply to the man beside her. "Do it!" The man raised his weapon, aiming it at Holmes, but Watson, with a burst of instinctive bravery, lunged forward, knocking the weapon aside just as a shot rang out. The bullet whizzed past Holmes, embedding itself in the wall with a deafening crack. "Run!" Watson shouted, his voice sharp, as they both scrambled towards the door. Holmes hesitated, his mind calculating their next move, but it was too late. The woman stepped forward, her eyes cold and unforgiving. "You think you can escape?" she sneered. "You've already lost." Holmes didn't waste a second. He turned and grabbed Watson by the arm, pushing him towards the door. The room was closing in, the walls tightening around them, and for the first time, Holmes didn't have all the answers. But he wasn't done yet. They dashed down the hallway, their footsteps echoing, and the sound of their pursuit grew fainter, drowned out by the thunderous beat of their hearts. The woman and her accomplices were no longer their main threat. It was the conspiracy itself, the hidden hand that had orchestrated everything that they needed to defeat. But as they ran, Holmes knew one thing for sure: the game was far from over. The conspiracy was only just beginning to reveal its true form, and this time he would be ready. The chase would continue, and this time the shadows wouldn't win. They would fight back together.